Sandra, you know, back in 2012, the Governor General of Jamaica, Sir Patrick Allen, proclaimed the third Friday in May each year as National Children's Day. What this means is that we should take the time out to provide love and affection to our children.
I know, Fabian, and that's exactly why we're having this special National Children's Day edition of Your Jamaica magazine. I'm your host, Sandra Clark, and I'm joined by our specially invited co-host,
Fabian Morris.
Fabian is a sixth form student at Jamaica College and president of the National Secondary Students Council. Stay with us. When we return, we learn more about Fabian and other outstanding children and young people of Jamaica.
Hey guys, have you seen the Child Month calendar? Look, they have so much in store for us. By the way, this year's Child Month theme is Encourage, Enable, Include Me. That means May is celebrating all of us. But you know, special emphasis is being placed on children with disabilities.
And I heard that Jamaica magazine will be bringing us the voices and the stories of disabled children.
Wow. We learn about how the Jamaica Cultural Development Commission, as we all know it to be JCDC, is including children with special needs in their programs.
Plus stories and encouragement from adults who have been disabled from childhood.
They're also taking a closer look at deaf etiquette, the causes of various disabilities, how to treat them, and how to prevent them.
As well as where children with disability can receive rehabilitation and assistive aid and become outstanding performers and sports stars.
So, wherever you are, make sure you're locked into Jamaica magazine each day, same time,
Same station.
to catch all these features and more. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.
Good day, I'm Stephen McHugh, and this is your JIS News for Friday, May 17. The Jamaica Trade Information Portal, which will make it easier for local and international investors to do business, was officially launched yesterday. The portal was launched under the tagline, Trade Information at Your Fingertips. Industry and Commerce Minister Audley Shaw says it's part of government's broader initiative to make trade information more accessible to Jamaica's business community.
The government has been strident in its commitment to improving our competitiveness, recognizing that this is pivotal to our social and economic growth. This recognition translates into not only the need to implement far-reaching reforms, but to also implement these reforms quicker than other countries that are on a similar path.
The Trade Information Portal will provide traders, investors, and consumers with a smoother interface. The portal provides vast amounts of information on the regulatory and procedural steps for trade. Minister Shaw says it will ultimately assist to drive the country's economic growth. Persons wishing to access the portal may visit jamaicatradeportal.gov.jm. The Tinson Pen Aerodrome is now equipped with a pilot lounge valued at $1.5 million. Minister of Transport and Mining Robert Montague says this paves the way for two companies to now begin domestic flight operations on the island. This will open up more gateways at the Kingston-based aerodrome, creating access to additional air transportation to various sections of the country.
Domestic flights are going to lead to the next natural things, which is international flights. So I am saying, let us really and truly deal with Caribbean integration and encourage our Cuban brothers and sisters to come to Jamaica and shop and go back to Cuba, just like how we used to go to Panama and Curacao and shop and carry back.
Minister Montague was speaking yesterday at the ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Pilot's Lounge at the Tinson Pen Aerodrome. He says the Ken Jones Aerodrome in Portland will be equipped with a pilot lounge next. Jamaica Public Service customers will soon be able to utilize electric power wheeling services. Electric power wheeling offers JPS customers the ability to provide electricity to the power company, where an equivalent amount of electricity may be used from the grid at one or more locations. Energy Minister Favour Williams made the announcement on Tuesday during her 2019-2020 sectoral debate in the House of Representatives. Minister Williams said customers wishing to participate in this facility would be required to apply for an electric power wheeling license and an electric power wheeling contract.
The electricity power wheeling regulations are being developed to provide further guidance to the sector. We are expecting to receive a consultative paper from the Office of Utilities Regulation, OUR, to start the process. It is expected that this will give us some sense of the pricing environment for power wheeling.
She also disclosed that 757 net billing licenses had been issued to Jamaicans since the pilot program in May 2012. Since her appointment to the portfolio in February, she assigned 26 of these licenses. Net billing is a facility that allows people to sell the excess power generated from renewable sources in accordance with a net billing license and a contract with the Jamaica Public Service Company. Former Prime Minister Edward Seaga is still in the United States receiving medical treatment at a hospital in Florida. Prime Minister Andrew Holness has reported that Mr. Seaga remains in positive spirits, considering the physical effects of his illness and treatment. Mr. Holness, accompanied by Government Minister Olivia Grange, visited the former Prime Minister on Wednesday. While there, Mr. Holness said Mr. Seaga was assured that Jamaica was in a good place and that the country's economic recovery was being carefully managed to ensure social equity and prosperity for the working-class masses of the Jamaican people. Mr. Seaga was also informed of the many expressions of concern, love, prayers, and good wishes from the Jamaican people, in particular those from his former constituency of West Kingston. The Prime Minister says Mr. Seaga is under close medical supervision by a team of doctors, including Jamaican specialists and nurses, and is surrounded by his family. 58 female wards of the Granville Child Care Facility in Trelawny and their families participated in a family reintegration intervention session at the home on Wednesday. The event was hosted by the Child Protection and Family Services Agency, CPFSA, under the theme Stronger Families, Stronger Society. It was held in observance of International Day of Families. Acting manager at the Granville Child Care Facility, Marcia McGibbon, says the event is aimed at building positive relationships between the families and the wards, as well as improving parent-child relationships.
For some whose parents did not turn up or family members, they were distraught. They cried. For those whose family members came, you see a little bit more ease and they're more happy and all of that. And I know for tomorrow it's going to be a different set of girls.
And finally, the quaint town of Lucy in Hanover is to be developed into a tourism destination. The town has been selected among several communities across the country as an ideal spot for cultural tourism. It's part of the Ministry of Tourism's mission to rebrand the island as a destination for cultural experiences. Tourism Minister Edmund Bartlett says a rehabilitation of historic sites, such as Fort Charlotte and the town's port, are among the plans to establish Lucy as a prime destination.
We're providing an opportunity for entrepreneurship at the very base of the population within our space. We think that tourism is going to be made more meaningful to the average Jamaican when access is provided for income-generating activities.
Mr. Bartlett made the statements after a recent tour of the Hamden Wharf Development Project in Falmouth, Trelawny. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stephen McHugh. Thanks for watching.
Welcome back. Our first feature for today is geared towards inspiring and motivating children with visual impairments.
Coming up is the story of a blind mentor and former education officer of the Ministry of Education who has not allowed his lack of sight to deter him from accomplishing his vision for his life.
I think I realized that I had a vision impairment maybe in my early childhood schooling when I attended basic school in Stony Hill. and realized that I was quite different from all the other youngsters. It has its own range of effects. There are psychological and social effects. You start wondering if you are different and how different you are. And then you realize too that your pattern of interaction with students and with adults was different. People were always a little tiptoeing around, not wanting to say certain things. And during early childhood primary education, I experienced a lot of failure as a consequence of the vision impairment. And that, I am sure, shattered my self-esteem in those early days. I think as I got older, then there were other issues about the whole business of denial and going through anger periods, and till I get to the point where I finally accepted the idea, which was way up until I was probably about 2021. I currently am retired from Ministry of Education as an education officer. But since retirement, I have been doing a lot of workshops and seminars involved in a number of issues, looking at change management concerns, special education concerns, and perhaps a part of the passion, looking at boys' education. I discovered that the boys were considered to be the troublesome ones. And a lot of people were concerned about the behavior because it was impacting their learning. I use a lot of unconventional ways to try and get the boys to learn, getting them involved in practical, active kind of learning situations, and found that it worked a great deal. But I also found out that if you respect them and you treat them well, no matter how offensive they may be, you can reach them, you can teach them, and you may even preach to them. So currently, I've now expanded that to even start working with some boys, looking at boys on a mission. A colleague told me about that, so if they're on a mission, then we want them to show interest, to do their best, to pass their tests, and in the end, to big up them chests.
Dots 1 and 2, right? So you press that.
One of the things that I have learned as a person with a vision impairment, and the lessons I would want to share with other persons who have vision impairment, especially children, is that perhaps the most important thing is self-determination. Having the ability and the capacity and the drive to go and to do the things that you want to do in spite of negative thoughts, in spite of failure, in spite of all of those things. I also would want to say to students with vision impairment that you have to be good at advocating for yourself. So self-advocacy skills is very, very important. Know what you want. Ask for it. Also make sure that in asking for it, we do so with a lot of respect and a lot of understanding of others. Nothing is impossible to those who believe in God. And I have found that that philosophy has worked for me all the way. I exercise faith in God, and I would also want to commend that to persons with vision impairment, that they need to have a source that they're going to anchor themselves to. And in believing that nothing is impossible, I have been able to culture a very positive attitude to life, and that positive attitude has worked for me, and I am confident it will work for others.
So besides being the National Secondary Students' Council President, my co-host Fabian is also an award-winning public speaker. In fact, he is the 2019 winner of the Rita Marley Public Speaking Competition.
Oh boy, enough about me. Coming up next is some outstanding young ladies who are making their mark in synchronized swimming.
I didn't start it here in Jamaica. It was started before me. I think when I came here, it was two clubs, I would say 2 clubs in Kingston. So I started it here in Port Antonio. 10 years ago, it wasn't a team, it was one swimmer only for a couple of years. And then kids started joining, more and more started joining, and here's a team.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I love synchronized swimming because of the pretty swimsuits. I wanted to show off myself to other countries.
The reason why I'm doing synchronized swimming is because when I was younger, there's not really a lot of sports that was there, and I also love water.
Synchronized swimming is a very unique sport. It's different from everything else, and I like to stand out.
It's a tough experience, it's challenging in many cases. I like the fact that we get to go out a lot, we get to get exposed to different things, different cultures and stuff.
We really don't select the girls, we take everybody who comes and we give them a chance, and then we'll see who stays. Synchronized swimming is not the sport that you can do twice a week for 1 hour. It's a very complicated sport that you have to do as speed swimming. You have to be very good at speed swimming. You have to be very good at gymnastics. You have to do a ballet class sometimes, and of course synchronized swimming actually on land and in the pool.
Up there, don't turn, and then you walk out.
So the girl is practicing 4 times a week, sometimes 5, and depending on the school schedule, of course.
The level of dedication is about, saying 1 to 10, it is about 8. Because it's not a lot of sports there's around that I can do. So doing synchro, it takes a lot of time to think about the things that you're going to do, have about a duet and a solo. When it comes on to shows, it has about 12 different routines.
It's very hard to balance school and training because most of the times training finishes late-ish at night, so I will have to get home and sometimes study, and so I go to bed late, and it's kind of hard to wake up in the mornings.
This leg is great. This one is about
Synchronized swimming help you with development. It develops you physically and mentally too. I think the best advantage that they get being a swimmers is that they get in confidence. Knowing that you achieved something and you did something that many people cannot do. It gives you confidence and self-respect, and this is what the girls really need.
In the last few years, I've grown to the sports because when I was younger, I had my coach repeatedly saying, "Shall we work? Shall we work? Shall we work?" And I think before I reached about 16 or 15, I think I got better at that because knowing that I'm the oldest in the group, I have to show example.
Usually here I'm making our routines and trying to make sure it fits the personality of the swimmer first and the skill level.
I do a lot of mixing up of routines, especially when it comes to like duets and teams, sometimes solo.
It's all I want to do. It's my life. I would love to be in the 2020 Olympic Games, doing my best, competing, hopefully to get a medal.
Competing at the Olympics will make more Jamaicans know that synchronized swimming is actually in Jamaica.
Have you ever stopped to wonder what's the correct or accepted way of addressing someone with a disability?
Terms such as blind bat or handicap are never to be used. They are offensive, but don't just take our word for it.
Call me Nefi Sheba. Call the person by their names if you know their names, and if you don't know their names, ask. I recall when I was growing up, disability was not a word. Most persons who had varying impairments, people used to call them, even today, I'll use this one. They call persons with one hand or one foot one-y. And they call persons who are deaf the D word, which I will not say. The Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities and the Disabilities Act push forward that you put the person first. So I know sometimes we love to say the disabled man. He is a man first and foremost. And so I know too that some members of the disability community, they don't mind. But if we want to be politically correct, just remember it's a person first.
I know many of our children and youths and even adults, they face labeling in their communities. And one of the derogatory terms that people would use to describe them is that you're retarded or you're retarded. And those are terms that, you know, emotionally, they hurt persons with intellectual disability because you are seeing the person with a condition and not the person.
I am Hannah Kay.
They are also referred to as handicapped.
Don't call me that.
Don't call me that.
But we all know that what we refer to as a handicap is a barrier that you place. It can be a physical barrier, it can be an attitudinal barrier that you place on the person, you know, but the person is not a handicap. Anybody with a disability is a person first. And so you address the person. Do you, the tall person? No. You would call the person by him or her, by his or her name. So address the persons by their names.
You might say that, but the person is deaf, I can't sign. Ask them, maybe they can write, or maybe they can lip it, you know, and you figure it out together. Or if someone is in the space, they can maybe tell you, but ask. It's always nice to ask. And people who are blind are not necessarily deaf. So we do not need to shout and, you know, scream if it's a person who is blind. They can hear and they can speak.
It's a challenge, but for most persons will find the term visually impaired acceptable. People have many ways of referring to persons who are blind, which, you know, we in the blind community will find quite derogatory, right? There are terms that people use, you know, sometimes, you know, the tease or the other children, for example, you know, referring to them as bat or blind bat, or blinky, or cast eye, or, you know, those terms obviously are not acceptable terms and are you know, not terms of endearment at all.
I recently went to a function and the question was asked in the room, what do you think, what are the words that come to mind when you hear the word deaf? And everybody, you know, in the audience sought to say, no hearing, discriminated against, and all those kinds of words. And the deaf person said, what about champion? What about an achiever? What about a motivator? What about those positive words that we refer to others in society as? People with disabilities are those too. And so if we begin there, no, you do not have to pay money to change an attitude. An attitude is a decision. And so if Jamaicans, out of understanding that people with disabilities are people and they have capabilities, abilities like everybody else, then I think that will be a humongous achievement, because it will then have a ripple effect on everything else that happens in society.
We are just like you. We have the same needs, we do the same things. We work, we have families, we cook, we wash, we clean, we do all the same things. We are not different. It means that when you're thinking of persons who are blind or visually impaired, you know, think of us as, you know, your brother, your sister. The same things that you need, the same things that you want, respect, the need for autonomy, those are the same things that we want.
I know a lot of persons might say, but that is what they are. And I would say, no, that is not what they are. The disability might be part of their person, but they are not their disability. The disability is a condition. And so all the other derogatory words that are utilized, if we put ourselves in the position, recognizing that disability is no respecter of persons, whether class or socioeconomic status, color, disability has no bias. And so in these days when we have those beautiful roads and we drive on them at high speeds and we can end up in accidents, a disability is a second away.
Hi everyone, I'm Joshua, and since it's National Children's Day, I want to highlight two of Jamaica's outstanding children who are helping to make Jamaica a better place for everyone to live, work, raise families, and do business. First, there's 8-year-old Courtney Greaves, who goes to Jessary Paul Primary. Courtney decided to celebrate her 8th birthday by feeding homeless people in downtown Kingston. Then there's Jonathan Dixon. Jonathan attends Meadowbrook Preparatory. He is just 11 years old, but he recently launched his first book of short stories. They're a little bit younger than me, but Courtney and Jonathan are just two of the many students making my generation proud and proving that Jamaica's future is bright. With the right support and encouragement, every child has the ability to achieve his or her dreams. Happy Children's Day to all my fellow children.
And this is how we end our magazine for today.
Thanks so much for browsing with us. We do hope you enjoyed the show.
To provide feedback on today's program, simply email jamaicamagazine@jis.gov.jm or send us a message on any of our social media sites. I'm Sandra Clark.
And I'm Fabian Morris.
Have a great weekend.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.